everyone. Welcome to this episode of This Day. I'm your host, Bree Cox-Kennedy.
And I'm Michael Taylor. And this is kind of a special edition of This Day. We're going to go for an hour, and we're going to be celebrating the 60th anniversary of Village Television itself.
So exciting.
Yeah.
I can't even
I've only been here like 3 years, so I'm just a teeny part of that.
Well, I'm even less than that. I'm a microscopic speck.
But here, the reason we're in our kind of unusual seats, where we're in the guest seat, because we kind of gave up the anchor chair to the person who kind of started it all, and we want to welcome to the program to talk about 60 years of Village Television, the man who knows it all, Rob Merritt, or the original host of this program and so many more.
Well, I don't know it all, but I know enough to be dangerous, I guess. Thank you very much.
That's great to have you here.
Welcome to the show.
Great.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
How does it feel to sit in that hot seat?
Well, it's completely different. The desk is different, the background's different, the lighting is different, the cameras are different. Other than that, it's the same.
It's all the same. It's all TV. So
you sit, you talk, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, you started way back, you came from Cal State Fullerton to here.
Right. But here wasn't here. Here was what used to be the old administration building, which is now the San Sebastian community. And we had to do internship from Cal State Fullerton. I think they still require it. I don't know.
Yeah, most programs do. But
yeah. So they said, there's this little TV station down there in Leisure World. Go down there and talk to them. And they said, yeah, sure, we can use free labor, So that was how that started.
And what year was that, Rob?
That was 1969, so that would have been the spring semester of 69.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you just continue on? The internship eventually ends. Did they offer you a job at the end?
Well, I applied. I said, this was convenient because we were living in Tustin at the time, so that was pretty convenient. And I was fairly comfortable with the operation at that point, albeit they were going through some changes. And so that was, So I started actually as an employee then in the summer of 69.
Wow.
After my school semester, In fact, we were working when the graduation took place, and my co-host and my friend George Phelps, who also went to Cal State, he went up and picked up our diplomas because we were too busy to go to graduation. So
You didn't even walk.
Yeah, no, we're working. So that was the start.
What got you interested in television in the first place?
Well, I've told this story before. I had a friend in high school who we still see periodically, and her father was in the car business. So she used to go down to Los Angeles when he would shoot commercials for his car dealership. And she said to me one day, she goes, I could see you in one of those jobs where you're in one of those rooms with all those TV sets, meaning monitors. And I said, oh, yeah, okay, fine. And then our counselor, our high school counselor, asked me to host the media guest for a career day at our high school. So I interviewed a guy from a radio station. And again, it was, in Cal State Fullerton, I really didn't know what I wanted, but I ended up seeing that communications was going to be fun, and something I wanted to do. So there I was.
It just kept coming right in front of you, right? You just kind of followed that path.
Well, and if you see a lot of the people on TV today, at least of our LA stations, a lot of them went to Cal State Fullerton. So it seems to be kind of a broadcast.
Yeah, I went to Cal State Fullerton.
There you go. As did a couple of people here. So besides myself.
Yeah, it's amazing. So back in 1969, there wasn't a lot of programming going on down here, and there wasn't a real set kind of everything. So when you started working, did you guys just kind of make it up as you went?
Well, first of all, we were in black and white, so that was that limitation. The original studio was in Clubhouse 1, and they moved them over to what was then called the administration building, which I said is no longer there. So if you can picture where the bocce courts are today, if you turned around and looked at San Sebastian, that was our end of the building. It was down there. So we were there, and it was live. It was TV like it was in the 40s. Live, art cards for transitions, live voiceovers, all that kind of stuff.
The old booth announcer days.
Yeah, coming up next is whatever. We had one tape machine, so some shows got taped, and most of the talent was residents.
Wow, okay.
So back in your early days when you first started, did you have a format of programs, or did you just kind of make it up as you went along?
No, we had regular scheduled programs. We had one called Fun with the Fine Arts. We had one called The Art of Living in Leisure World. Different shows like that, which were resident run. We had it would be the general manager position. Now we called him back then was the guy in charge for the management company, and he would come on once a week and read from the Leisure World News. kind of like Mayor LaGuardia, and would talk about, and then answer questions from people. And that was interesting because we didn't have an office. Our desks were out in the studio, and our phones had an off switch, so when it would ring, it would just blink. So he had 2 secretaries that would take the questions and pass them to him. On the air, he'd say, oh, we have somebody, oh, they're interested in knowing about the golf course, or whatever, you know.
Right.
And so he would do that show live. And that was so popular, we had to have a second one of that. It was called Administrative Chat with your administrator, Robert L. Price. And then it was so popular, we had to have Chat Part 2 with his assistant because he had so many questions coming in. That was when construction was still going on here.
Right, buildings were still happening, roads. And
Cortese was still selling units and all that, so there was a lot of questions and a lot of back and forth.
Mm-hmm. So what did you start to love about what you were doing that said, I'm going to stay here for, you didn't make you didn't decide to make it decades then, but you were here for decades.
Right. Well, part of it was living in Irvine. It was convenient. My wife worked in Irvine. We thought that was a nice place to live. If I made the jump to the next market, would be either San Diego or Los Angeles, would mean a major move, and would mean either that or commuting, which neither of which sounded very good to me. So I had a slight chance to go to Channel 5. We had a series of the old radio guys on. Harry Von Zell, if you remember him from the old George Burns, Gracie Allen's TV show, he was their announcer.
Okay.
And he also had a hookup with Home Savings, which this is the old Home Savings. So we were doing some promotions for them, and we had different people on. The guy that was the millionaire guy, he was on, gave me $1 million check. We had the lady that did the voice of Rocky the Squirrel, those kind of people, radio show. And one of the guys we had was a guy who was a staff announcer at Channel 5, and he said, you want to come down some night and watch, how. So I went down there and spent a night, and it was very interesting. I watched him do the news show, and it was like, well, a lot of swearing and throwing of paper.
In between?
Well, yeah. The font was wrong, lose the font, get this, get that. And it was like, yeah, it was wild.
It can be action-packed seeing behind the scenes of how all that kind of stuff works. And that can be the really exciting part, right? Not just being on TV, but the making of it.
Right. Well, that's where shows like the Mary Tyler Moore Show, were popular because it was about television. So they got some things right. Not everything.
One or two things.
Yeah. So that was that. And then, so that was a possibility. The guy said, if you're interested, but I just kind of talked to my wife and I said, I'm not really interested in moving to LA, and you're probably not interested in me commuting to LA. So stayed here.
Wow, that sounds like a natural fit. So Rob, what is the top 5 significant changes that you've seen throughout those decades? From when you started to when you completed?
Well, the jump to color was a big deal for us. Moving to this building was a big deal. The El Toro Airport issue was a big deal. The cityhood was a big deal. Those are all kind of important issues. We had a couple of fires in the area. Technically, we've got obviously better cameras, better lighting, and much better lighting. Nice backgrounds, so it's a lot better that way. We literally were. Well, I told this story before. I had a friend visit, and he said that Channel 6 is the MASH of television stations. So that was kind of like about as bare bones as you can get.
Absolutely.
So a lot has changed, good, mostly good stuff.
So when you were, back in the day when you guys were kind of doing this, did you have community support? Were people excited about it? Or were there some people who said, why are we doing this?
We had a mix. We had residents that really liked us. We had a very active volunteer group of residents who were working at our front. You have some nice ladies in your front office now, but we had residents who would volunteer to answer the phone and do all that good stuff. So that was good. We had some board members that questioned our value. So that was interesting. We had one guy who was actually brought on the board to get rid of us, and he wasn't successful, obviously, because we stayed. But there were some board members who kind of questioned it, and then every few years there had to be a contract negotiations between the company we worked for and the management company here at the time. So that was always rough. One of the years they wanted to keep the cable system but not keep us. And the guy that was our boss really went to bat for us, and he said, well, I think the studio is important, and I think it serves a function in the community. And so we took him to lunch after that, and we gave him we'd been working with a fella from Catalina Island Conservancy, and he would come on and promote, going to Catalina and all that. And he had a kind of a joke thing he would do because of the buffalo on Catalina Island. He would send his workers out, and they would get one of the buffalo chips that is hard and dry, and obviously had aired out a while, and he would bring it back and spray it with gold spray paint, mount it on a plaque, and then he would put on whatever you wanted, make a presentation, that little speech he would give. So we had him with us at lunch, and he gave our boss the lecture. And the caption that we put on the thing was, "When the chips were down, you came through for us."
Oh.
So, and he hung in his office for as long as he worked here.
Did he ever know what it was?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was like grass and weeds, and yeah, it was
hard to hide.
You could tell what it was.
I can't imagine it'd be anything else at some point.
So what was their resistance?
The residents questioned the value. There was a lot of part of the problem. We were on at night at first, and so that was a problem because we were competing with all the good stuff on LA.
Sure.
We went to morning and early afternoon, which was a big change, and that made a big difference. We started picking up viewerships, and then I think the big thing that really started picking up viewership was board meetings. We started covering live the United, Third, and GRF board meetings. And then we would have the presidents come on the next day and do like you're doing now,
Like
do
kind of a rundown of what
do a
happened.
segment, and talk about whatever. We had one guy who was the Golden Reign president. This shows you the level of people that live in this community. This guy was a retired Air Force colonel. And he would bring in a 17 to 20 page typed report every month, and it would say page 6 of 20, page 7 of 20, all typed perfectly.
Wow.
He was a colonel, and he briefed the Joint Chiefs of Staff, so he was a heavy-duty guy. We had several admirals and generals retired that lived here back in the early days. We may still, I don't know, but yeah.
Did you feel like you were doing a service? Because this is before internet, before a lot of ways that people can find information in other places.
Yeah.
Did you feel like, well, we're definitely a service to this community?
Right. Well, and of course, the ability to go live. The newspaper only came out weekly. I'm not sure what the current status is, but
Globe.
It's the Globe, but it was Leisure World News back then, and they only came out once a week, so a lot could happen during the week, and so the management staff could come on, or the board members could come on and say, hey, we got this problem over here, or whatever, and explain what the situation was. We had the golf pro on. He would do a little demonstration. He was a character too. He was a former Marine Corps sergeant, so he talked without the profanity, talked like those guys talked. He was always upset people were stealing his range balls. So he didn't like that. He made them not happy about that. So we had that kind of a show on. You can imagine doing a live golf demonstration in a small studio.
Did you ever think about going into covering mainstream current events?
We did things that would apply to the community,
But outside of the community?
We did, like the fires in Laguna, we did a little bit on that, and the earthquake in Laguna. We had a staff member that lived in Laguna, so she was a good source of what was going on there. We brought in some outside stuff. We had the fire station guys on. We had the highway patrol on. We had the Orange County sheriffs on. And then we had a lot of the like elected politicians, which you probably still have, people, the Congress members, and school board members tended to come on only when they were up for re-election. We would get a raft of school board people at that point. As far as covering anything, we were kind of limited because we worked for the community here. So as far as going and covering something for Channel 5 or Channel 7, is that what you're referring to, kind of like that?
Yeah.
Just like, national events or something that has occurred outside of this immediate community.
We would mention something as an example when President Nixon retired. George and I went over to El Toro and saw that. Those kind of things.
When you decided to kind of like start doing shows and you start doing things, it wasn't like me. I'm going to be honest. I come in, I do the show, I do very little behind the scenes. I don't do any editing, do anything like that. But you were doing it all back in the day, right? When you weren't on camera, you weren't doing something. You were on the technical side of things,
Well, before they went to the robotics in the boardroom, we used to have to move the cameras from the studio to the boardroom, hook them up, retime them, and then stand there and hold them up and run camera for however long the board meeting went. So that was that, So yeah, there's a picture somewhere, and I wasn't able to find it, of me laying underneath a console soldering a wire, and I couldn't find it. But we were building something. I forget what, but yeah. So
was it fun to kind of build it as you went, like building the airplane mid-flight?
Yeah, it was. When you're in your 20s and 30s, it's a lot easier than when you're in your 50s and 60s. But and we went through a different. The changes in management was one of the things that impacted us. At first, we were under the auspices of the community, so to speak, the foundation they called it back then, which was the prerequisite of the interim management company. And then we were working for the cable operator. We worked for that company that had the cable contract for a number of years. And then eventually they had some contract issues, and so we went to work for at that time, the management company, which preceded the current management company.
Oh.
So I retired in 12, so I was still with the old company at that point.
Still with the old guard.
So tell us about, you've got a Sonny Bono story. What's the history on
Sonny
that?
Bono, before he ran for Congress, ran for the Senate. I think it would have been against Dianne Feinstein if he'd gotten the Republican nomination. And so they sent him down here to be on TV. I guess they figured this would be a good way to, no risk of having him on down here. And so some people may listen to a guy named Hugh Hewitt on the radio. He's a very well-known conservative radio guy. We happened to be going to the same church at the time. So I called him up and I said, hey, I've got an interview with Sonny Bono. You're the political genius. What should I ask this guy about? And he said, this, and this. And there was a proposal that Dianne Feinstein was working on, the Desert Protection Act. So he said, be sure to ask him about that because he's from Palm Springs. So I did. And he did one of these. He was looking at me and he went, looking at his staff person over there, like, now what do I say?
Oh, no.
So we moved on to music at that point. We started talking about I've Got You, Babe, or something, But yeah. So that was an interesting affair. Most of the politicians that were on were very good and knew their stuff and wanted to be, but he was
a little bit of an oops. Now, speaking of Sonny Bono, you've over the years there have been celebrities that have come through here doing whatever, promoting whatever kind of thing. So, who stands out to you as like, wow, that was a fun day, or that was a fun time, or whoever those people were?
Yeah, we had Cloris Leachman on. She had to be sure and swear at least once on the air, she said. So that was that. She did her own makeup, which I thought was interesting. She stopped in the hall and did her own makeup. Barbara Rush, of course, who lived here for a while. Brett Halsey, who still lives here. We had them on a few times. Alan Hale Jr., the skipper from Gilligan's Island, and he was promoting, I'm not sure what he was promoting, but we did a cooking segment with him. That was fun.
A cooking segment?
Yeah.
With the skipper?
Yeah, with the skipper.
Was there coconut involved?
No, I think it was some kind of I think he had a restaurant. I think that's what he was promoting, was his restaurant. Glenn Yarbrough, the folk singer, was here. He was here to do a concert as a favor to his mother-in-law who lived here. So we had him on. Shirley Moe Downey, the drag racer, we had her on. They were at Orange County Raceway. Those are the kind of people. Let's see, Dean Torrance of Jan and Dean was on. He was very nice, a very nice guy. Those kind of people, over the years we had.
When you have a celebrity in and you kind of like, okay, I want to ask them all these big questions, that kind of thing. Do you have a different feel for that? Do you feel like, okay, I want to have an extra set of preparation, or like if somebody you really admired, you say like, oh wow, this is going to be really exciting.
Sometimes, I would do homework on that. A lot of times I would do homework on the political stuff I had to do. If I were going to interview the city council members, because at that point we were covering the city council. So we were either over there covering it with live cameras or watching it in the control room here. So that was new to do that, albeit they were residents here, which is our constituents, if you will, our bosses, but they were also the elected city council people, so that was fun. I like doing the prep, I like doing the interviews. That was kind of what I enjoyed, despite the pictures of me underneath the band soldering wires, which we had to do, but yeah.
Did your interviewing style grow, change,
evolve? Oh yeah. I think I got a little more comfortable in the role, which is normal, I guess. Sometimes it would be people that we would also get books sent to us. We would sometimes get these obscure books that we would.
Somebody wanted to do an interview with the author kind of thing?
Exactly, and they would come on and we would, obviously wanted to, do the handheld shot of the book type of deal. We used to have a book show on with a resident early on, and she was really good. But she was, retired. I think I'm a retired librarian, but she was very, very good at that. That was good. And then we had some residents on that would just talk about that kind of stuff in passing. So, and then we had all the clubs and organizations here as well. So you get them on talking about their activities coming up.
And you also had an opportunity to kind of interview and talk to one of your own favorite legends in the motorsports, right?
Yeah, a guy I'd actually done some work with as a student, working on a student film at Cal State Fullerton, was Dan Gurney from All American Racers. We had him down here a couple of times, and then we were able to go out to his shop and interview him on the scene there as well. That was very fun. I always admired him as a driver. I also was able to interview Mickey Thompson at a sports writers luncheon. And as I mentioned, Shirley Muldowney was down here as well. But Gurney was good, and very much an engineer as well as a driver. So he was into aerodynamics and talking about the different aspects of, a wing on an airplane is to make it go up. A wing on a car is to make it stick to the track. So he was into all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so that was fun to talk to him. And then we were able to show. I guess you still show movies on the.
Yeah.
So one of the movies we showed was the old Grand Prix movie with back in the '60s.
Okay.
And he was in it briefly, and then there's a couple of shots of just a group of drivers. So we interviewed him about that and how the movie production interfaced with the actual racing that was going on in the '60s and how that worked out. That was kind of fun. Talk about all of that. But he was a good guest. Some not as good. We used to go to the Long Beach Grand Prix. That was fun. I got to interview William Shatner up there, and that was interesting.
For the celebrity drive that they used to do?
Yeah, post-celebrity drive, yeah. And he was funny. I mean, he was personable, which I thought was nice. Could have been whatever, but he was nice.
Yeah, and the Orange County Raceway is just a stone's throw from this building.
Orange County Raceway, yeah, and where I live in Irvine, you can still hear the cars back in the day.
Oh, I could hear them in El Toro too.
There you go, yeah.
Back when it was called El Toro.
Yeah. So that was that, and we would go there, because I enjoyed that, so I would go there occasionally as well. But yeah, it was a different time here. I mean, we used to have probably a block from where we are right now. There used to be a skeet shooting place. You can picture that in Leisure World, So there was.
I actually can.
That kind of stuff.
A lot of open space.
We had a very active rod and gun club back in the day. They had a problem on the golf course with what they call mud hens.
Oh, sure.
That would leave deposits on the golf course, much to the displeasure of the golf pro.
Of course.
So they were making noise about how are we going to get rid of the mud hens, and they eventually brought in a professional person to do. But the Rod and Gun Club said, give us a box of shells and we'll
turn around, walk the other way.
Yeah, we'll take care of your mud hens. And they said thank you, but no. We did have a few instances where residents would maybe do things they shouldn't. We had a gentleman on the board who that had owned a roofing company, and they were doing some work in, I think, United Mutual. He was a board member of United. He had no problem with climbing up the ladder, and of course the liability issues of all that was. We had another guy who used to hide in the bushes with his stopwatch and time lunch breaks.
Oh gosh. So in the early days when you were doing this stuff, like you said, you liked racing, so you went and covered racing. Was it kind of like fun to be able to say, hey, I think this would be cool to do, and I'm just going to go do it?
Some of that stuff we did, yeah. Obviously, we had to do our work here.
Right.
But, we would work into our schedule to be able to go to Long Beach and press day or the race itself, whatever. Yeah, we actually went to the first of those races at Long Beach, so it was quite the event back then. Of course, Long Beach has changed a lot too, as you can imagine, over the interesting theaters and interesting shows that they had going on there have all been replaced with nice hotels and restaurants now.
So if you could go back in time, Rob, are there any changes that only you can see looking backwards that you would have implemented or done differently?
Well, we were always kind of unsure if we were going to still be here. So we had to kind of walk very carefully. We could have maybe done a little bit more as far as not so much station editorials, but maybe getting people with different points of view on. We did some of that later on. I know I had a couple of people on who were very much, again, this would have been in the 2010, 2011 time era, who were very much against the management situation or very much against the board members. So having those people on was kind of a challenge because you wanted to have their point of view get across, but yet you didn't want to, we worked for the management company, so we obviously didn't want to be a part of maligning them, but we had to let this person say their bit. So maybe we could have done more of that early on. We were very careful early on. Back in the early days, the boards were not open to the public. Residents could not attend the board meetings.
Really?
And we had some board members who said, the state law changed, they had to open them up. And they said, fine, I'll quit the board. And we had some people who actually quit the boards because they didn't want to have the rest of the residents coming in there. Then they started letting us cover a press conference. We used to get an interview with the presidents after the board meeting. So both the newspaper and myself would be in there, and and take notes. We had a gentleman, a third person in there from a paper in Laguna Beach that didn't like management because they wanted to throw their paper for free to every home in Leisure World. And Leisure World didn't want their paper because part of what they were doing was criticizing management.
Oh, okay.
So that got interesting. And we had people that wanted to be interviewed, like the presidents, and this guy wanted to record them with a tape recorder because he said, you tell me that I'm getting it wrong, I'm going to get it right. And they said, well, the president doesn't want to be recorded. So that was kind of a standoff there. You know, somebody else we had here, I didn't interview him, but we had him down here. Gerald Ford was here once when he was speaker, and George Phelps got to interview him. And then he was back when he was president at Clubhouse 3, right across the street from us. And that was interesting to see with the Secret Service at work and I'll work with all of that. It was very interesting to see that. The fire station 22 got to wash his car. And apparently they were opening up the little side things, and there's all kinds of weaponry in there. And they said, no, just close that. You don't need to see that. You know. So,
No pictures here.
Yeah.
Is there one interview or a set of interviews that kind of stick out in your mind saying, that was just more than I imagined it would be? That just, wow, that really stuck with me because of how it turned out or how wonderful it was or maybe how south it went and how fast it went south?
Well, the Sonny Bono one obviously was a shock, that one. I think, quite frankly, the most interesting stuff was to see what was going on here in the community. The move towards cityhood was a big deal. The business with the El Toro Airport was a big deal. And we had a congressman at the time who said, well, whatever the best use of the base is, he wouldn't commit to yes or no. It was going to be a commercial airport, which would have been not very pleasant for the people both here and in Irvine of having big jets taking off all the time. So that was important. At one point in time, I actually got to interview Heidi Cortese, the daughter of the guy that built this
Ross
place.
Cortese, right?
And she was on right after 9/11. She was starting a charitable event to work with Marine Corps families that were, the guys were being sent away. And so she was working with some of the families down at the Marine base, which I thought was kind of nice. So she was doing that. That was a surprise to see her, to meet her. And then obviously the Congress people we had on, the last one I interviewed was John Campbell, was the previous congressperson.
Sure.
So yeah, we had some of those people were interesting. They were all fun. They were all interesting. They're all different, but some were more interesting than others, shall we say.
So speaking of interesting, you used to cover parades
Yes.
that went through the community?
In the old studio, we were right near Clubhouse 1, and the parades would come right up the street from Clubhouse 3 to Clubhouse 1. So we would roll the cameras out on the street on a Saturday morning, put long camera cables on them, and we covered the 20th anniversary parade and the 25th anniversary parade. Unfortunately, because of format changes and storage issues, the tapes are not available, but they were there for a few years.
That would have been fun to see.
That was very interesting. And he had, everything from the canine club walking their dogs to the golf club with their golf carts to the county supervisor in a Cadillac raving at everybody. And then the guy that was our supervisor for a while was a retired Marine Corps general. And he was able to get us the Marine Corps band for one of our parades.
Oh, wow.
So that was the 20th anniversary parade. 25th anniversary, I ran the control room. 20th anniversary, I was the handheld camera guy. So I had been in the marching band in high school. So I got my 20 seconds of fame to be at the end of the Marine Corps band, marching in the Marine Corps band for 20 seconds, and they went live to my shot, which I thought was kind of fun.
That's great.
But you can always tell them at the Rose Parade, they always have straight lines.
Oh, yeah, they're the ones that can march.
They know the drill, as they would say, so yeah. We had good relationships with the base. When it was open, they obviously wanted to be good neighbors. And for a while, we had a couple of young guys that were on from the base giving a report, this is what's happening, or we're going to be doing this or that, or whatever. That was kind of a good deal.
Speaking of the base, when it was targeted for closure, that became the big issue in South Orange County for a long time. I remember Supervisor Spitzer and Wilson, who represented down here, were heartily against it, but they had a 3-2 majority that was for a long time. You guys were, you guys tackled that issue here, right? What was that like?
We did, and of course we had, the majority of the residents here were opposed to an airport.
Right.
A few of them were for it. And there's the famous bit that got to be on Comedy Central when Stephen Colbert, before he became Stephen Colbert, did a report from down here on grandfather land and how the people down here wanted to run the county, which was kind of tongue-in-cheek. But they wanted to make the airport And the community got so involved, there was as you mentioned, a 3-2 majority of the county supervisors, 3 for an airport, 2 against. One of the supervisors in Fullerton was running for re-election, so the community here actually gave money to her opponent to defeat her, and then it became 3-2 anti-airport.
Right, because she promised to do that before that the money came pouring in.
Yeah, actually, she was the yes, and so she was out, and the person that took her place was the no on the airport.
Yeah, that's the
So that was a big deal, and then that was sort of the beginning of the city. The city found out if you went back to Washington to talk to the congressman, you got some staff person. If you're a homeowner association, but if you can say I'm the mayor of Laguna Hills, or the mayor of Laguna Woods, you got to meet with the congressperson.
Right.
So that part of that was a clout issue.
Right. That was the impetus. One of the impetuses to get Laguna Woods its own cityhood.
Exactly. To go to a
county
cityhood.
territory.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they had a lot more clout that way, you know.
And then when you saw it, kind of Irvine took over, and they said, "Well, we're going to make it the great park. We're going to do all those kind of things." How involved were you guys in kind of covering that at all?
Some we would have like Larry Agron on and different people from the park aspect of it. Of course, that's had its stops and starts along the way as well. There's
Mostly
been
stops.
A lot of changes. We live in Irvine, and we've seen a lot of things happen there that maybe the community isn't all happy about. But it was fun for me. My younger grandson wanted to learn to drive a stick shift car, so I was able to use one of their parking lots to teach him how to use a clutch.
Not the runway?
No, the runways were far away from where we were. We were over near the water park, actually. But yeah, but it's still under development. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that they're still going to do there. But Irvine is using it more than they had been in the past, I guess. So yeah, it was very controversial. They used to do the jets from El Toro would actually fly right by the towers here, the 14-story towers here, and you could actually read, Lieutenant John Smith on the side of the plane. They were that low and that, down to the ground. So yeah, the feeling here at that time was, well, there are guys.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like patriotic and.
Yeah, there was no big complaint about that. But if somebody's going to Newark, I don't want a thing flying over my house.
Well, and of course the reality of the airport was because of the mountains, you couldn't really go into place international other than Mexico City. So you really couldn't have enough gas on the plane to fly any place significant. So international airport, it really wasn't going to be an international airport.
Yeah, and the reality, for those who were in the flight path, is we lived in the flight path at El Toro when we were in El Toro, and if you were on the phone and you were talking to somebody and one of the jets went over, you had to stop for a second. Hold on. I mean, it was a legitimate concern about every day, 24/7 at an airport here.
Yeah. In fact, that was the decision when we bought our home. We were renting in Tustin and moved to Irvine. We looked down here, and we were actually at a house, looking at a house when a plane flew over, and we had to all stop talking. And that was on the way out. My wife said, "We're not moving here," because it was. I mean, we still heard the planes in Irvine. The Blue Angels used to use our street as a navigational, much to my children's delight. Was 4 or 5 blue jets flying up the street. But yeah,
aviation, I love it. That's great. So, did you maintain your residence in Irvine the whole entire time that you were working?
Yeah, we still live there.
Still in the same house.
Yeah, in fact, we just painted it. Yeah, we've been there. My wife worked for the Irvine School District for a lot of years, so that worked out well. And the schools are good there, so kids went to Irvine High.
And when was your last year here, Rob?
2012.
2012.
So the end of 2012.
Wow.
And then did you retire, or did you go on to do something else?
Nope, I said I'm hanging it up. I'm out. I'm done. I had a few speaking engagements after that, and a few things like that, but mostly just did some traveling and then honeydews.
So besides your multiple roles that you had here, did you work outside of?
I did have a couple of part-time jobs at some different TV operations, and some, not a lot, but some. Did a radio show for a short time with some guys and that kind of stuff, but mostly here. And of course, we started, as I said, the shift from nighttime to daytime programming. So that meant going to bed early and getting up early and getting down here somewhat ready to go on the air at 8:30 in the morning.
And you'd spend your whole day here.
Well, pretty much 8 hours per year, yeah. And then sometimes weekends. Sometimes we'd have to do special stuff, like when they moved the Globe, which is no longer there.
Right.
But when they moved the Globe from by the freeway, for a while across the street from the golf course. Mark and I covered that late one night. They had to cut it in half. And
Right.
put it in halves. They welded the halves on trucks and drove up to the location, and then they put it back together. And then that became a political issue with the Rossmore people, Cortese people. So.
Right. So I'm gonna test you here a little bit. I'm gonna see if you can remember when you first started here. You were in your 20s. You were just a kid, and I can't imagine that you thought of this place as anywhere but this old retirement. What am I? Oh my gosh! But as you started to learn about the people in the community and started to interview these folks, did you find as I have, just that they're a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of information, and so much about them is amazing.
Yeah. Amazing experiences. And of course, generationally, at the time when I started, they were the World War II generation. And then we segued into the Korean War generation and the Vietnam generation, and now we've got probably Desert Storm vets that live here, But interesting. People had traveled a lot, had interesting businesses. You found out like one of the board members had done some of those display cases for the Twin Towers before 9/11. This company had built the display cases for one of the stores, so he was aware of how that thing was put together.
Wow.
That kind of stuff. We had people that had all kinds of interesting careers and backgrounds, and like I said, some retired admirals and generals. Some people that were just interesting people.
And conversely, how did the residents feel about you being so young?
Yeah.
I mean, that age gap
tolerated me, I guess, at first, until I finally figured out how to ask a cogent question. I guess was part of that. One of the fellows I really enjoyed meeting here was a gentleman named Harry Curtis, who had worked for ABC. And my older son is a theme park designer, so I was very interested in the Disneyland and how it was built. And that first live television show that ABC did was a television unbelievable event to go live from Disneyland.
Oh yeah, for the opening.
In '55, yeah. Well, this gentleman that lived here had been an East Coast vice president for ABC, had worked on the Olympics several times and the political convention. So he was a great guest to have on because he could talk about all that stuff that went on at those events and what a hassle it was for ABC or any of the networks to do that stuff. But that's just one example of the kind of people that we had here. We had people that were had worked on the early days of the internet. We had people that had been. We had a guy that won the 1925 Indianapolis 500 early on. I mean, those kind of people were here back in the day. I never met her, but apparently Polly from Polly's Pies or Marie Callender, one of those two lived here. Tom Brokaw's mom lived here for a while.
Okay.
So those are some of the kind of people that
As you got to know the community, what did you learn by going into the community that you couldn't have done just behind a desk?
Right. I learned how this community has laid out, and there was quite a bit of thought that went into the planning for this community, where the clubhouses would be, with the golf courses and different aspects of the community, and then how the developer had to kind of make some changes along the way. What ended up being the third golf course was going to be homes originally, but because of the Marine base at the time, they said, okay, we'll make this a green belt and make it the golf course, as opposed to building more homes. So there was that aspect of it. And some of the people here really liked living here. Some of them, it was a final stop, so to speak. Others, it was the interim stop, and they were going to go somewhere else, either move to the towers or move to another type of facility, higher care facility, or to be near their kids, that kind of thing. So it was different to see why they lived here. And of course, at that point, we were having first-generation people and new homes. By the time I retired, we had some second-generation families, and now there's probably third and fourth generation owns the same, family owns the same house in United or Third or wherever.
Oh.
Go right ahead.
So, in terms of the clubs, when you first started,
Yeah.
do you recall how many different types
I
of
want to
clubs
say there were maybe 100 at the most.
Oh, so that's pretty significant.
The joke was that the Republican Club met in Clubhouse 1, and the Democratic Club met in the phone booth behind Clubhouse 1. That obviously changed over the years. The Democratic Club became very big and very active, and as was the Republican Club. And they had one remote we did was when Ronald Reagan was governor, and they interviewed him outside Clubhouse 3. A resident interviewed him, but they talked about the fact that he was probably going to run for something else. And,
Just maybe.
He was one of the first guests on Channel 6, by the way, back when it was still Channel 6, in the old Clubhouse 1. The gentleman who was the first host on Channel 6 was a guy named Harry Babbitt. If if you're a history of big bands of the 40s, he was a singer in Kai Kaiser's School of Musical Knowledge or whatever it was. And he worked for Cortese, so he was like the PR guy, and interviewed Ronald Reagan when he was still an actor. He was when he was just getting ready to go into politics.
Wow.
So that would have been interesting. Obviously, that was, no one's got a copy of that because it was back in the day. That was live at Clubhouse One, which was the old studio.
So when you look at the TV6 and you look at what they've done with you, what do you feel like is the mission and the importance of having this television station be in this community in the first place, and and the purpose it served?
I think it serves a number of functions. One is just a presence to be here in case of like an emergency or something significant happens. They have a way to contact all the residents, at least that want to tune it on. I think covering the board meetings is important. The city council is doing their own thing now, I guess, but that was important early on to do that. And I think that's important that from an emergency standpoint. A couple of times during the El Nino floods, we came down and put the station on the air on Saturday in the middle of the rainstorms. So that kind of thing is important. And just a general information as far as management and the boards, what they're doing. A lot of times people move to a community like this. They've never lived in a place like this before. And so they're kind of learning how to live here, so to speak. And by watching the channel, they can see some of the different clubs and activities and different things that are available. So I think it serves as a good information source for the residents. And then there's stuff like the Trading Post where they can, get the bargain of the week. By that, they can watch you guys and hear what's coming up and what's happening in the community. And I think you guys do coverage of the board meetings and interview the board members and that kind of
stuff
as well. So
as well as the clubs.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that, and that helps people learn about what's going on in the community and say, oh, that's an interesting club. Interesting sidelight on clubs. There were clubs that started early on, maybe the 100 or so clubs, and then over the years, people lost interest or whatever, so the club folded and they gave all their last stuff to the Historical Society. 10, 15 years later, a bunch of people from that area said, we should have a Philadelphia club or whatever. And so then they would go to the Historical Society and say, oh, well, here's the last notes from the last treasurer or whatever. They could bring it up again.
Pick up where they left off.
Yeah, we had during one of the cable times when they were doing some changes in the cable system, the Chicago Club was very interested in having the Chicago broadcast station on the cable system. And the money wasn't really there. The community said, we don't really think we need to spend the money for the satellite dish or whatever. They actually raised the money to pay for the satellite dish. And so I had one of the guys on, and I said, why do you want to go back to where you used to live? And he said, what we do is we watch the local news, the Chicago news, and we wait till the weather report comes on. And it tells how cold it was and how Lake Michigan has ice in it, and we laugh and then we turn it off. Or if there's a local sports event they wanted to watch. So I thought that was kind of a funny reason to spend the money to have that. So yeah.
And how important was it, do you feel like, to change with the times? Because the fact that it was started in black and white, even though color was kind of the thing at the time, and just kind of like evolve as the technology evolved, and didn't have to keep up with that. For yourself and learn along the way.
We did, and the other part of that was just the fiscal aspect of that. You're working for a company, and they're on a contract with the community. They have to justify, buying 3 Sony cameras or whatever, or changing the lights or whatever. So there was a lot of that went on during those years where you had to kind of hope that you were on the right side of everybody, so they would renew your contract so you could keep doing stuff. And that was part of the negotiations to go to color, was a longer-term contract to go that. So a lot of it changed a lot. Coming up here was a big change. That was a big transition. We had to still be on the air a little bit down in the other building while they were building up here. So that was fun. Some of the things we did that were kind of fun, while they had purchased this building, before they changed it over and used it, we would do the interview with the board president. We would tape it right here, right behind me, on a couple of folding chairs. And we would say, now in 6 months, we'll be doing this live from the studio here. So that was kind of fun to do that, to see the building evolve. And of course, the negotiations that went on, originally there was going to be support pillars, right, where the 3 cameras were supposed to go, and what was going to be our studio. So that was negotiated out, but yeah. All that good stuff.
Rob, did you ever have a co-host, or did you fly solo during?
George Phelps, like a guy from Cal State Florida, and I would do the stuff. He did some of the political interviews. He would do the weather, and then when he retired, Ken Goldenberg was doing the weather. We had a couple of interns on over the years that would do segments and do stuff. So yeah, we had some. And then Paul was doing entertainment news, so we had those segments that he would do. When I wasn't here, he would do the show, or somebody else would do the show.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Bree doesn't want to co-host anymore. Do you have any of those show must go on kind of moments where something just went haywire, but we're live and we just got to keep going?
Well, unfortunately, we had a gentleman pass away on the air, and that was rough. It was a board, actually a meet the candidates meeting in the boardroom, and this gentleman passed away right live on camera. So that was a little rough. I went to a logo and went to something else, but that was a challenge.
Yeah, how do you handle something like that?
You go to a logo and you go to something else real quick. We had a light explode on the air, not on the air, but after the person had just left the set, and shot chunks of hot glass all over the place. So that was fun. We had a general manager who thought it was fun to harass his people when they were on. So we had a situation where the studio, the backdrop, there was a walkway behind it. So he would stand behind the walkway and pitch things over that would land on their desk, which was
fun little pranks.
Or he would walk through with a broom and start sweeping in front of him live on the air.
I heard a story about water and somebody shielding you from.
Yeah, and the old building was. That building was a temporary building. It was only supposed to be the sales building for the first homes here. And so it was not a very good building as far as...
Wasn't made to last.
Yeah, and one time during a rainstorm, I was in doing the control room, and a coworker and a resident were on the air doing the trading post. The gentleman that owned our company was standing behind me with a piece of cardboard to keep the water off the control panel. And he got tired of holding up the piece of cardboard, so he said, "Take this off the air." So we did. I mean, that building was a terrible building. There's a test they do for the Freon leak in the air conditioning systems. And there's a light they put up there, and you can see, like Ghostbusters, you can see this glow of green. And they said, when you go up in the attic of that building, the whole attic was green. So there was the horrible air conditioning system in that building.
It was probably very cool up there. A lot of Freon.
Yeah. But it was, they worked on that building a lot, and then they were going to replace it with a building down there, and then this became available, so they bought this building instead, which was good. So yeah. So how did you guys end up here? Because this is because you went to
that's for another
Cal
1
State
hour
Fullerton,
special.
Irvine. You went to Saddleback.
He's going to flip the tables.
I'm going to flip the table. I knew we'd get around to asking you a question. Well, I'll tell you. I went to Cal State Fullerton, much on a kind of like, I think this might be an interesting thing. Some people told me I should give it a try.
Yeah.
And I really did. I did fall in love with it in terms of television and production and news side of things. So I went to, my first job was in Abilene, Texas.
Wow.
Dice Air Force Base, and a lot of cows and a lot of oil. And I was working at the NBC out there and just really loved it. Started as a producer, then I was weekend anchor, weekday reporter, and then came out to, for some folks might be familiar with, KOCE-TV, the PBS station out here. And got to work with Ed Arnold and Ann Police on Real Orange for many, many years. Original host was Peter Murphy and Marie Hall Brown that we transitioned over, but for decades, for 17 years with them.
Right.
And then I went over and I teach at Santa Ana College now. And so this is really my fun part-time gig. My real job is over at Santa Ana College teaching over there, but this is what I just do because I enjoy, like you, so many years, I really just enjoy this process.
How'd you get here?
Well, I got here basically by a fluke. It was an interesting opportunity that came across my desk through Michael. And next thing I know, I'm sitting behind the desk. Not a lot of experience.
She'd never done television
Michael
like this before.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I had podcast, and it was former model, so I'm used to being behind the camera or in front of the camera. I suppose.
Yeah.
But other than that experience, I really didn't have much. So
learn on the job.
Big break.
That's great. Well, you seem to be happy and doing it well and doing it.
Thank you.
Having fun doing it. Well, I just want to commend Paul and the guys here because they've really made this studio a lot better than it was. I mean, we used to have drapes. We used to have drapes behind us here. We had some little lights that would light them up. One day, the light caught the scrim on fire. So that was kind of fun.
That's a little scary.
People were dumping their coffee cups on it and all that. And, that was like right over there behind me. And that was pretty fun to have that going on.
One fun connection to my PBS days to here is when I walked into the studio and they were showing me around, I saw the set here and I said, wow, that's really a great looking set. I said, we had just one like it at PBS years ago. And they said, it is your set. We bought it from PBS. So it was kind of a like a little segue into
That's
like
why you're so
here.
comfortable.
So I'm so comfortable at this desk.
Speaking of comfortable, what is the story about the 3 blind mice? And board meetings?
So when we started covering the board meetings live, and again, this is in the old building, we had to physically, before they went to robotics, we were physically down there with studio cameras and running them. So we had the back camera and a wide shot of the building, of the room, and then 2 operated cameras. And we had 3 residents who were having issues with the management company. And they would spout off and share point of view. So we would try and catch them on camera. We would spin around and get a 3-shot, and they would hold up their programs in front of their face like this. So George came up with the term 3 blind mice. So they finally got used to being on camera, and it wasn't a problem any longer for them. They didn't care. We also had a member of, and I think this was Third Mutual, about that same time, because you've got a board meeting going on, so you don't know who's going to talk or what's going to be happening. So you're cross-shooting from camera 1 and camera 3, and this one woman, I'm setting up the cameras before the meeting, and she said, could you tell whoever is in charge that not shoot me with this camera, but shoot me with that camera? I look better on that camera. I said, I'll pass it on, and everybody went, you can't do that. I said, I know, I'm just
passing it along.
Just the messenger boy here. And I thought that was interesting. There is a story that there was early on almost a fight between a member of the audience and one of the board members, one of the retired admirals or generals. This man in the audience said, this was an afternoon meeting we weren't televising. He said, you're not a good representative of our community, and you're not for free speech. You're very unpatriotic. Well, you don't tell a retired admiral that he's unpatriotic. So apparently he was about ready to come over the desk. Well, a staff guy did one of those, put it away.
Well, when you started back in '69, like more than 40-something years here, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever imagine yourself back then, like, this is going to be my career for a lifetime?
Other than that chance to go to Channel 5, which I passed on, I just kind of said, it seems to work, It seems to work for our family. It seems to work for me, so, yeah.
Do you feel like I'm going to say this. I'm going to give you credit for something. Without the work that you did and how that can-do attitude and the show must go on stuff, I don't know that we'd have the legacy of the 60 years here, right? Because it sounds like there were so many people who were like, oh, why are we doing this, that kind of thing. And you guys and your teams figured out a way along the way. Do you feel like the sense of ownership in what you were?
Yeah, I do. I'm very proud of the operation. I'm very proud of what it's become. Only wish we'd had this stuff in the day, But you guys even have a drone. I think you guys take out and shoot aerial stuff. So yeah, it's great. I'm very proud of the operation here. My friend that said we were the mash of TV stations, not anymore. It's come a long way with some good management and good talent.
Well, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like in 60 more years with the technology improving the way that it does.
Well, of course, there won't be any live people. They'll all be AI robotic people.
Oh, I can sleep in and have my drone do it.
That's right.
I finally get my clone. Rob, what's some words of wisdom that you would give somebody who's trying to fill these big shoes of yours?
Yeah, boy, for as far as, be interested in everything. I kind of prided myself on I could interview almost anybody on almost anything. We would have doctors on from UCI, and they want to talk about some kind of personal, intimate issues, and that can be rough. So, and then as far as do your homework, learn about your subject. Don't just walk in cold and try and interview somebody. If it's a book, try and read the book, at least read parts of it. And if it's a guest, try and find out a little bit about them, where they're at, and whether it's Sonny Bono or Dean from Jan and Dean, you can learn a little bit about the guests before they're on, and kind of do your homework. I think is important.
And you have to learn that along the way. I think in some careers and some things here's why maybe that didn't go successful. Instead of pointing a finger at the guest, maybe I need to do my homework. I need to be that person who's prepared. And you seem to have a natural ability to you are interested in so many things.
Yeah, you kind of have to be almost a Renaissance person in that you may not know how to do everything, but you kind of want to know how it works. Everything from dermatologist who told us what we should and shouldn't wash, which I thought was interesting. We had, some specialists from UCI on for a while. We had some eye doctors on that were very interesting. I was a retinal specialist, and I thought that was fascinating what he talked about, the things they were doing. And then just to see the residents here, you might be interviewing somebody, like I said, this guy was a board president, and he had a motorcycle, and he was a surfer, but he was also a retired colonel that used to brief the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So it's like that kind of person in this community. So you meet some interesting.
Lots of
obviously
diversity.
you've met some interesting people, I'm sure, over the.
And I've also learned a lot from our guests.
Right. And I think that's the thing that I think all of us probably would agree with in terms of like, you don't know what you don't know, and as you learn, you're like, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And the people you get to meet, that you'd have no other opportunity in life to do that unless you had the access and have people in like this.
And we had one of the interesting things that happened along the way was a TV production company shot a pilot down here. Mm-hmm. A gentleman wrote a book called Early Bird, and it was kind of about him. His family had a family member pass away, his uncle, in Florida, and they sent him down there to deal with the property. He ended up getting involved with a woman down there, an older lady, and ended up living in his uncle's apartment, even though it wasn't really he wasn't really supposed
community.
to. Yeah, and so they used this place as the pilot. It didn't sell, but it was fun to see the production crew come down here, and they used one of the clubhouses, and they hired a bunch of the residents as extras. So that was kind of a fun event to see that go on. We had the author on. He was, he was funny. It was a good book, but that. We had a guy on who was just passed away a couple weeks ago, a food PR guy. He's the guy that got us like the Alan Hale, some of that kind of stuff. And he was he's the guy that invented the pop-up turkey thing.
The turkey's done?
He said they gave us dozens of turkeys, and we had home economists cooking them at various temperatures at various times to see what was the perfect turkey. And then we designed the little spring inside to pop up at the right temperature. So he was a character too. I did get to interview another person you mentioned people that I thought were neat people. Steve Allen, I got to interview him a couple of times.
Wow.
Once over at what used to be Laguna Hills Mall, a bookstore over there. And I kind of liked his show when I was growing up. So that may be another reason I like doing TV. He wrote a book back in the day called Mark It and Strike It, which was his early days in television, which is a term referred to as a set piece. This is where it's going to go, and you put this tape on the floor,
right?
And that's the mark. So he was interesting, and I was in high school. A bunch of us went up to see his show at Channel 5, which was fun to see a live TV show. So that may be part of the spark too. I don't know.
That's just amazing. So, I mean, so many years and such a great opportunity for Bree here. And I want to thank you for being part of the early legacy that paved the way for Bree and I to be sitting, well, not usually here, but over there.
Right. Well, thank you for letting me have your side of the desk.
Absolutely.
Your PBS desk.
If anybody earned that chair, and for us not to sit there, Rob Merritt is the person.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for so many years.
Thank you.
And you've been watching a special edition of our 60th anniversary of Village television show. So I hope you enjoyed it, folks, and I hope to see you again on our regular edition of this day.
Thank you for watching, everyone. This has been a very special experience for both Michael and myself and Rob.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you being here.